Radio in the 1970s was a battleground. Songs got pulled mid-rotation, blacklisted by broadcasters, protested in state legislatures, and banned entirely by governments, sometimes for reasons that made sense and sometimes for reasons that were almost funnier than the songs themselves. Some of these you'll recognize immediately. Others have drifted so far from memory that the story behind the ban is the only thing that brings them back. Here are 17 banned songs from the 70s I bet you don't know. Number 17. God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols, 1977. By the spring of 1977, the Sex Pistols had already been dropped by 2 record labels and banned from performing in most major British venues. Their second single, released deliberately in the middle of Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee, was the match that lit everything on fire. God Save the Queen was released on May 27, 1977, on Virgin Records, the third label to take a chance on the band. The song had originally been titled No Future, and the name was only changed when someone in the band circle noted the Silver Jubilee date on the calendar and recognized what that meant for a song that opened with the national anthem's title. Drummer Paul Cook would later say the timing was largely coincidental. The band hadn't written it specifically for the Jubilee and weren't aware of the date when they recorded it. 4 days after release, the BBC announced a total ban, with Radio 2 controller Charles McClelland calling the record in gross bad taste. The Independent Broadcasting Authority followed with its own ban. Major retailers including Boots, Woolworths, and W.H. Smith all refused to stock it. Workers at Virgin's record pressing plant briefly walked out in protest at being asked to manufacture it. When A&M Records had signed the band weeks earlier, they'd pressed approximately 25,000 copies of the single before terminating the contract. Most of those copies were destroyed. Despite all of this, the record sold nearly 150,000 copies in its first week through independent record stores alone. During the Silver Jubilee weekend, the band hired a boat on the River Thames, sailed past the Houses of Parliament, and attempted to play the song at full volume through speakers mounted on deck. Police forced the boat to dock and arrested Malcolm McLaren and several others in the band's entourage. On the official UK singles chart, the song was listed at number 2 that week, held back by Rod Stewart's I Don't Want to Talk About It. Most major retailers had not stocked the Pistols record, and Virgin's own store sales were temporarily excluded from the chart count, a situation that led to a blank space appearing, where the number 2 listing should have been in W.H. Smith windows. The NME chart placed it at number 1. Many music historians believe it was the actual best-selling single of the week, and the BBC itself described the song as having reached number 1 in a 2001 retrospective. Number 16. Love to Love You Baby by Donna Summer, 1975. Donna Summer recorded this at the suggestion of producer Giorgio Moroder. The original idea was to create a demo, and Summer was reluctant enough about the material that she asked to sing it lying on the studio floor with the lights dimmed and the production team out of sight. What came out of that session was something Moroder decided was too strong to hand off to anyone else. The extended version ran over 16 minutes, and according to the BBC's own count, contained 23 simulated orgasms. The BBC banned it outright. In the United States, the Reverend Jesse Jackson organized opposition through his group Operation Push, arguing the song encouraged teen promiscuity. Italian state broadcaster RAI banned it entirely. None of this stopped it. Released in November 1975, the song peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1976, held off the top spot by Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. In the UK, it reached number 4 despite the BBC refusing to air it. It became one of the first disco tracks issued in an extended 12-inch format for club play, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame later named it one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. Number 15. Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be Alright by Rod Stewart, 1976.
Tonight's the night.
Rod Stewart wrote this song himself and by his own later admission, couldn't imagine writing it today. The BBC banned it upon release for sexually suggestive content, specifically a line describing the narrator coaxing a young woman upstairs. Some American radio stations edited the track or refused it entirely, objecting to Swedish actress Britt Ekland's spoken French passage recorded at the end, which Stewart later confessed he got her drunk to record.
Tonight's the night.
The BBC reversed its ban due to what was described internally as incredible public demand. That reversal is one of the cleaner examples of how bans worked in practice. The restriction generated coverage. The coverage drove interest and the public demand became impossible to ignore.
It's gonna be alright.
In the end, Tonight's the Night reached number 5 on the UK charts. In the United States, it spent 8 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the longest run at the top since Hey Jude by the Beatles, nearly a decade earlier. It became the best-selling single of 1977 in America, and the number 1 song on Billboard's year-end chart.
Tonight's the night.
Number 14, Give Ireland Back to the Irish by Wings, 1972. Paul McCartney wrote this in direct response to Bloody Sunday, the events of January 30th, 1972, when British soldiers shot 28 unarmed civilians during a civil rights march in Derry, Northern Ireland, killing 14 of them. McCartney recorded it within days. Wings released it as a single in February 1972. The BBC banned it immediately on political grounds. The Independent Broadcasting Authority followed. It was one of the fastest bans the BBC ever imposed on a major artist. The record was pulled before it could establish any real radio presence. Despite that, it reached number 16 on the UK singles chart through independent record shop sales and word of mouth. In Ireland, it went to number 1. McCartney said at the time that he had never previously made a political statement in his music, and that he felt he had to this time. The band made news across the English-speaking world, which ensured the song's message reached people who might never have heard it on the radio. Number 13, Hi, Hi, Hi by Wings, 1972. The same year, Wings landed in trouble again, this time on different grounds entirely. Hi, Hi, Hi was released as a double A-side single with Sea Moon in December 1972 and banned by the BBC on 2 counts, references to drug use and lyrics deemed sexually suggestive. McCartney maintained publicly that the censors had simply misheard one of the lines, which he claimed was innocent. The BBC wasn't persuaded. Despite the ban, the song peaked at number 5 in the UK, where airplay had been cut off, and number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. It was the band's second ban in a single calendar year, an achievement that even most dedicated provocateurs had trouble matching. Number 12, Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols, 1976. Before God Save the Queen, there was this, the Sex Pistols' debut single released in November 1976. The band didn't come from the record itself, at least not directly. It came from what happened on live television. On December 1st, 1976, the Sex Pistols appeared on ITV's early evening program Today, hosted by Bill Grundy. During the interview, band member Steve Jones called Grundy a dirty bastard and a fucking rotter on live television at around tea time. The country erupted. Newspapers ran front pages. Grundy was suspended by ITV EMI, dropped the band within weeks. Radio programmers across the country pulled Anarchy in the UK from rotation. The The single had already entered the charts before the Grundy interview, peaking at number 38. After the ban, it climbed no further, but the story of the broadcast became one of the most retold moments in British popular culture. The tabloid headlines from the following morning, particularly the Daily Mirror's The Filth and the Fury, are preserved in music history as clearly as any chart position. Number 11, The Pill by Loretta Lynn, 1975. Country radio in the mid-70s was not a place that welcomed songs about birth control. Loretta Lynn recorded The Pill in 1972, but Columbia Records sat on it for 3 years, aware that the subject matter was likely to cause problems. When it was finally released in 1975, many country radio stations refused to play it at all, without any formal ban, simply through individual programmers deciding they didn't want to deal with the response. The song tells the story of a woman who has spent years pregnant, raising children while her husband does as he pleases, and who has finally gotten access to birth control and is claiming her own freedom. It was written from an autobiographical perspective. Lynn herself had 6 children and had married at 13. The pill had only been widely available on prescription in the United States since the early 1960s. And in 1975, it remained a genuinely contested cultural topic in many of the rural communities that formed country music's core audience. Despite the radio reluctance, The Pill reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot Country Singles chart in 1975. Some country stations that initially refused it eventually came around as the song's popularity became undeniable. The song has since been recognized as one of the more politically significant recordings of the decade, but it took years for country radio to play it without hesitation. Lynn was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1988, and The Pill is now regularly cited as one of her most important recordings, which is a remarkable reversal for something that programmers once treated as too radioactive to touch. Number 10. Short People by Randy Newman, 1977.
Short people got no reason.
Randy Newman had been writing and recording for over a decade before this song became his first major pop hit in 1977. He meant it as a satire of irrational prejudice, the kind of thinking that allows a person to dismiss another human being based on a physical characteristic they had no control over. Newman wrote the song's narrator as a lunatic, someone whose biases were so extreme as to be obviously absurd.
Don't want no short people.
Audiences did not universally get the joke. Radio stations in Boston, Maryland, Georgia, and several other states banned it. After listener complaints from people who believed Newman was genuinely attacking short people, Little People of America issued a public condemnation. In Maryland, State Delegate Isaiah Dixon introduced legislation in February 1978 that would have made it illegal to broadcast the song on radio, a bill that was advised against by the Maryland Attorney General on First Amendment grounds and did not pass.
Short people are just the same as you.
The controversy, as it generally does, made the record a national talking point. Short People peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1978. Newman later said he was genuinely surprised that the satire didn't read clearly enough to prevent the backlash. He also said the experience of having his first hit be so widely misunderstood was a strange kind of success.
Short people got no reason to live.
Number 9. Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones, 1971.
Brown sugar, I thought you tasted so good.
The Rolling Stones released Brown Sugar as the lead single from Sticky Fingers in April 1971. The song contained references to slavery, interracial relationships, and drug use in a way that was direct enough that several American radio programmers initially pulled it, uneasy about the content. Some individual stations refused to add it. The BBC did not formally ban it, but its subject matter made it a difficult record for daytime programming in both the UK and the United States. Despite the reluctance, the song went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, spending 2 weeks at the top in May 1971. In the UK, it reached number 2. It became one of the band's signature live songs for the next 5 decades, though Mick Jagger announced around 2021 that he had retired the song from the touring setlist, a decision that generated nearly as much commentary as the original controversy. Number 8, Lola by the Kinks, 1970. The Kinks' Lola is most often remembered for its gender-bending storyline, which drew calls for a ban in its own right. The reason the BBC actually banned it was more bureaucratic. The song's original lyrics included a reference to Coca-Cola, and the BBC had a long-standing policy against songs that mentioned brand names, which they classified as commercial advertising they had not been paid for. Ray Davies, the song's writer, was in the middle of the Kinks' American tour when the ban was announced. He flew from New York to London, a round trip of roughly 6,000 miles, re-recorded the word Coca-Cola as Cherry Cola, flew back to the United States, and rejoined the tour. The edited version was what the BBC eventually played, and the song reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. In the United States, it climbed to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. The other controversy? The song's narrative about a young man and a woman named Lola, who may or may not be transgender, never resulted in an official ban, though it generated significant comment at the time and has continued to be discussed ever since. Number 7, Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed, 1972.
Oh, honey, you take a walk on the wild side.
This is one of the more remarkable stories in the history of radio censorship, largely because the ban that should have happened didn't. Lou Reed wrote Walk on the Wild Side about specific individuals from Andy Warhol's factory scene in New York, people navigating lives that mainstream radio in 1972 was entirely unprepared to acknowledge. The song touched on transgender identity, male prostitution, oral sex, and amphetamine use, all within 3.5 minutes. RCA Records, anticipating a problem, prepared an edited version for American radio stations that removed one explicit reference and changed a racially charged phrase. However, most American DJs played the unedited original anyway. In the UK, the BBC played it without cuts. Censors, reportedly unfamiliar with the slang phrase used for oral sex, simply didn't catch it. The result was that one of the most genuinely subversive songs of the decade slipped past the gatekeepers almost entirely intact. It peaked at number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1973 and became Reed's signature solo track. He later said he was shocked it was ever a hit at all.
Oh, honey, you take a walk on the wild side.
Number 6, Kodachrome by Paul Simon, 1973. Paul Simon released Kodachrome in the spring of 1973, and it became a top 10 hit in the United States, but not in the United Kingdom, at least not on the BBC. Kodachrome was a brand name, and the BBC's policy against songs that mentioned commercial products meant the song was excluded from airplay. Simon had already run into the BBC's brand name policy once before, with Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard, which was flagged for a different reference. He declined to change the lyrics for Kodachrome, meaning the song never received significant BBC radio exposure, despite reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. Kodak discontinued the Kodachrome film stock in 2010 after 74 years of production. By then, the song was more widely recognized than the product itself.
Oh, honey, you take a walk on the wild side.
Number 5, Je t'aime moi non plus by Jane Birkin and Serge Gainsbourg. This recording originally caused scandal when it was first released in 1969. The BBC banned it immediately. Several European countries refused to air it. The Vatican condemned it. Even the original record label, Fontana, withdrew the release under pressure.
Je t'aime, oui, je
Gainsbourg had first recorded the song in 1967 with Brigitte Bardot, who asked him not to release that version. He re-recorded it with his partner Jane Birkin in 1969. Birkin's vocals, and recorded with her lying on the studio floor, combined with the song's production, created something that left very little to the imagination. In 1974, the record was re-released in the United Kingdom on a new label, and it went to #1 on the UK singles chart. It was the first UK #1 record to remain banned by the BBC while sitting at the top of the chart. The band had done precisely what bans generally do. It ensured the song was the most talked about record in Britain that month. Number 4, My Sweet Lord by George Harrison, 1970.
My sweet Lord.
George Harrison released My Sweet Lord as his first solo single in November 1970, and it became a genuine phenomenon. #1 in the United States, #1 in the United Kingdom, and one of the best-selling singles of the year. But a number of American radio stations had problems with it.
Really wanna see you, Lord, but it takes so long.
The song blended Christian and Hindu devotional elements, moving between Hallelujah and the Hare Krishna mantra within the same track. In the more religiously conservative parts of the American radio market, stations pulled the record or declined to add it, citing its mixing of Christian devotional language with what they characterized as non-Christian religious content. Harrison's response to the religious objections was essentially that the song was sincere and that he didn't see a meaningful distinction between different names for the divine. The song went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 regardless. Years later, Harrison described the band in certain markets as something he found more interesting than troubling.
My sweet Lord.
Number 3, War by Edwin Starr, 1970. Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong originally wrote War for the Temptations, who recorded it in 1969. Motown held the track back from release as a single, concerned that it was too politically charged. When public demand, driven by the Vietnam War, pushed for a release, Motown decided to have Edwin Starr record a separate version rather than risk the Temptations' commercial standing.
What is it good for?
Starr's version, released in June 1970, went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 consecutive weeks and became one of the decade's defining anti-war statements. But in 2001, following the September 11th attacks, media conglomerate Clear Channel Communications distributed a list of songs to more than 1,000 American radio stations considered lyrically questionable in the current climate. War was on that list. Stations weren't required to pull it, but many complied voluntarily. Starr died in April 2003. The song remains one of the most powerful pop recordings of the Vietnam era, and one of the stranger victims of the post-9/11 radio environment. Number 2, Billy, Don't Be a Hero by Paper Lace, 1974. Paper Lace were a Nottingham band who recorded this song in early 1974 and took it to #1 in the United Kingdom. The song tells the story of a soldier who ignores his fiance's pleas not to volunteer for dangerous missions, goes anyway, and doesn't come back. American audiences heard a different version, a cover by Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods, which also reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in June 1974. The BBC initially refused to promote the original, concerned about the song's treatment of military sacrifice at a moment when the Vietnam War's reputation was still very much in flux. The combination of a catchy melody, an unambiguous anti-war undercurrent, and a chorus designed to stick in the head indefinitely made it difficult for programmers to dismiss outright. Paper Lace followed the song with The Night Chicago Died later that year, which reached #1 in America. Another example of the band constructing a convincing-sounding story around events that bore only a passing resemblance to actual history. Both songs spent years earning criticism for their straightforward emotional manipulation, which has done nothing to stop people humming them. Number 1, Imagine by John Lennon, 1971.
Imagine Imagine all the people.
John Lennon recorded Imagine in the spring of 1971 at his home studio at Tittenhurst Park in England. The song was released as a single in October 1971 and went to #1 in the United States and eventually in the United Kingdom after a re-release. It is among the most commercially successful recordings of the post-Beatles period and has been covered more than any other song from his solo catalog. But Imagine was banned or restricted in a number of contexts throughout the 1970s. Several conservative American radio stations refused to air it for its lyrical content, which included the invitation to imagine a world with no religion, no countries, and no possessions. A handful of religious broadcasters explicitly blacklisted it. South Africa banned it under the apartheid government's restrictions on content deemed politically subversive. Some Soviet-aligned countries took issue with it for entirely different political reasons, finding its vision of collective human equality at odds with state ideology. In the United States, the restrictions were never universal. Many stations played it without hesitation, and it remained in heavy rotation throughout the decade. But the song's refusal to fit comfortably into any political category meant it accumulated enemies across the spectrum at different times and for different reasons, which is itself an unusual kind of legacy for a song that presents itself as an invitation to peace. Lennon was assassinated in New York City in December 1980. In the weeks following his death, Imagine returned to #1 in the United Kingdom. The restrictions that had attached themselves to the record in various countries quietly became irrelevant, not through any official reversal, but simply because the world had moved on and the song had outlasted the arguments against it.
Imagine all the people.
17 songs, 17 bands, and behind every one of them, the same basic pattern. Someone decided that music was dangerous enough to silence, and the silence ended up making the music louder. Some of these songs faded anyway. Others outlasted everything that tried to stop them. That's the thing about a ban. It tells you more about the people doing the banning than about the song itself. If any of these brought back a memory or gave you a story you didn't know, hit the like button and subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from.